On top. Welcome back to episode 3 in our series of strange things found in ancient prayer book. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel, and if you hit the bell next to the subscribe button, you'll get a notification when our next video comes out. And don't forget to share this video, it really helps us out. Today's episode is about how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, went head to head with the teachings of Aristotle and Leonardo da Vinci on embryology. Let's check it out and dive straight in. Many people think that modern thoughts around embryology have been around for ages, but that's just simply not true. There have actually been two prevailing theories over the years: preformationism and epigenesis. Preformation is actually what it sounds like, that the human embryo actually takes shape from the beginning, really, and that is essentially what later becomes a larger human and then a baby eventually. To some extent that almost sounds logical, because as a baby we see it grow up to become an adult in exactly the same form. And that was the theory that was developed by a chap called Marcello Malpighi around 1650. So that's fairly recent. Epigenesis is actually a much older theory from around 2,000 years ago, around the year 380 BC. And that was first developed by Aristotle, someone you probably have heard of. He was a Greek philosopher who came up with the idea that the human form emerges gradually from a relatively formless egg. This theory was supported by Leonardo da Vinci and many others as well. Epigenesis is much closer to actually what we know as embryology today. But all the theories and scientists had a problem. They could actually prove nothing. The biggest problem with embryology is that you can't see it. And that wasn't until the development of the modern microscope that they could actually look at what the embryo looked like in magnified form. That didn't happen really until the 18th century, which is fairly recent. And once they were able to do that, they were actually able to develop the embryology theories that have now since developed. Fast forward to 1980 and enter Professor Keith Leon Moore. Just to prove his credential, he was a professor of anatomy in the Faculty of Surgery at the University of Toronto in Canada. Moore was also the Associate Dean for Basic Medical Sciences and was the Chair of Anatomy from 1976 to 84, and is also the founding member of the Association of Clinical Anatomists and was presiding president from 1989 to 1991. Oh, did I mention he also wrote the textbooks on embryology that were used in the universities in North America? Well, I say this all because even if you've never heard of him, you now know just some of his credentials. So, in 1986, he was invited to King Abdulaziz University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to examine verses of the Quran that relate to embryology, really just to see how accurate they actually are. He didn't expect much, but that was, he was given access to translators and scholars to understand the Arabic and the verses, and the language of the Quran itself. There are many verses in the Quran on embryology, and his task was really to analyze all of them. That timeline again. Epigenesis theory emerged in 380 BC. The Quran was revealed in around 650 AD, about 1,000 years later. Preformation theory emerged in 650, around 1,000 years after the Quran. And the microscope was developed in the 1700s. His textbook, Clinically Oriented Anatomy, was first published in 1985, and Professor Keith Moore's analysis of the Quran took place in 1986. During his analysis, what he found surprised him so much that he actually changed his textbooks. The Quran not only describes the embryo, but accurately describes the stages that the embryo goes through during its development. For perspective, this is something that no scientist or philosopher knew until around 1100 AD, 1100 years after the Quran was revealed. Not even Aristotle or Leonardo da Vinci knew it. What Professor Moore said was that what was written in the Quran was just not known when the Quran was penned. In fact, one verse of the Quran was new to him, but when he researched it and found the verse to be correct, he added it to his textbook. The verse from the Quran in question was chapter 23, verse 14. And then we create out of a drop of sperm a germ cell, and we create out of the germ cell an embryonic lump, and then we create within the embryonic lump bones, and then we clothe the bones. with flesh, and we bring forward into this into being as a new creation. Hallowed, therefore, God is the best of artisans. As you can see, the verse is detailed and specific. He presented his findings at a press conference in Toronto, no less, and he explained what he found was not only accurate, but it was new to him. But when he checked on it with the zoology departments, and the Quran itself was proved to be correct. One journalist asked the question whether the Arabs could have discovered these things through crude dissections of perhaps pregnant women. But Professor Moore had to remind them that all of the images that they had been shown of the embryo had been enlarged with a microscope, and you cannot see it with the naked eye. The microscope was only invented 300 years ago. He went on further to actually say, what you are suggesting is that the microscope was invented. Muhammad, peace be upon him, did the research and then destroyed the microscope, and it was then rediscovered 1100 years later. That's just ridiculous, he said. So when asked where this information came from, he said it could only have been revealed. All the time, this was reported widely across the front pages of newspapers in Canada. One headline read, "Strange Things Found in Ancient Prayer Book." And that's where I got the title of this series. I want to leave you with another verse on the same topic from the Quran. It's chapter 32, verse 9. And then he forms him in accordance with what he is meant to be, and breathes into him his spirits. And thus, O men, he endows you with hearing and sight and feelings as well as minds. Yet, how seldom are you grateful? How often are you grateful? I want to leave you with that thought. This is just one of many, many miracles in the Quran, and I'll be covering a different type of miracle during this 30-day period. I'd love to share them all with you, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on our WhatsApp, all you need to do is click the link in the message, and that will open up the YouTube. You can subscribe from there. Finally, please share this video. It's the best way to help us out, and we want it to go out to as many people as possible. Thanks once again for watching another episode. We'll be back tomorrow with another great miracle of the Quran.